Hey guys, Jeff here at the Common Sense Camper. One of my subscribers asked me about emergency fire kits. An emergency fire kit's not going to have any of the following: a bow drill set, char cloth, flint and steel, magnifying glass. I do not want to go back to the Paleolithic period to start a fire, and I'm not going to put any of those things in an emergency fire making kit. An emergency fire making kit should allow you to make a fire right away, quickly and efficiently, and it needs to do that and perform under all kinds of weather conditions, whether it's cold, snow, sleet, rain, hot. Go out and test them, make sure that they do work and you know how to do it. You also need to try and do it one-handed. You need to try doing it out in miserable weather where it's wet or cold, because those things are all going to change the dynamics of starting a fire with any of the implements that you're about to see. You want to try and make sure that it's A, either not susceptible to water, or B, make sure that you have it waterproof by either putting it in a dry bag or a Ziploc bag or something like that, so that if it does become wet you can still use it. So let's get to the kit, check it out. I'll explain to you what it is, where I got it, and why I use them. Alright, let's take a look at the kit. I'm a big fan of the Trioxane fire starters. I've found that these things just work. They work well under a lot of different conditions. You just cut this open right here. You can strike it with a ferro rod or a lighter, and these things burn really hot and for a very long time. And I found that between this and the fat wood, and I'm able to dry out twigs and sticks that I place on top of this. So I actually have 3 of these in this kit, and I highly recommend these. I also have a fuel fired lighter. This is one that my dad gave to me. I've seen them out there before, and this is one I think someone probably gave him, and in return he handed it to me and said, here you go. And I like it because I can see how much fuel's in it, and the other thing is that it has a lock on it. So when I go to open that, start a fire, I can do that, but so that I don't drain the fuel out or accidentally ignite it, there's a lock at the bottom, and now it won't fire. So this and this is what I'm going to go to immediately in unison with my fat wood if I need to start a fire right away. I also have a ferro rod. This is a bayite, and you can get these on Amazon. I think they're like $7. I really like these because they have a pre-drilled hole in the ferro rod, so I can put, you know, a brightly colored piece of shock cord on there. And then I'm not a big fan of the fire steels that have the plastic ends on them. Light My Fire, those are very popular fire steels, and there's nothing wrong with those, especially for an emergency situation. But I've found that when you use those over and over again, the handles come off and they break pretty easily because the epoxy just doesn't hold it tight to the fire steel. But these are great because then I can put this on here, and then I just wrap bank line around it, and you can seal it with either epoxy or fingernail polish, clear fingernail polish. And what I found is if this does come loose from the ferro rod, because I have that hole and this shock cord in there, the handle stops right at the shock cord. So that's going to keep that on there. Or you can also use Gorilla Tape. That's another great way to wrap that handle, and it gives you another way to start a fire. I have a small pocket knife in here. This is a very small Gerber folding pocket knife. Wicked sharp. You could probably shave your face with it just because the steel is so thin. And typically I'm going to always have another knife on me, but I put this in here so that I have some way to process down this fat wood. I can make feather curls with it if I have to, and I have a way to strike my ferro rod. Now, because this is a smaller knife, I'm not real trustworthy of the locking mechanism. So if you're striking this ferro rod like this, I don't know that I would recommend doing it that way, because if you're applying a lot of pressure, that lock could break and fold over on your finger, and you definitely don't want a first aid situation if you're just trying to make a fire. So what I recommend is make sure the pocket knife has a 90-degree spine on it, and just use it in the closed position to strike the ferro rod with. Now, if I'm desperate and that's not working and nothing's going right, then I will use the blade of the knife. Yes, it will dull it really badly, but if I need to start a fire right away and I'm desperate, that's what I'm going to do, and this will strike the ferro rod pretty wicked. It'll shower the sparks for sure. I also have a lighter in here, and this is just a big lighter wrapped up with a Ranger band. That is another way to make a fire, and it keeps the head of the Bic lighter dry and debris free. Fat wood, I have probably 6-7 pieces of fat wood in here, and I like to pre-process this for my emergency kits. However, if you do that, make sure you switch it out periodically, because what's going to happen is when you pre-process it into the smaller, like matchstick sizes, it's going to dry out and the resins are not going to be useful. So if you do pre-process those pieces, make sure you keep a larger one in there so that you can process that down if you forget to switch these out. Old Faithful, I love these. To me, these are by far the simplest, easiest way to start a fire, and that is cotton balls and petroleum jelly. Everyone has that stuff at home. I threw it in a little Ziploc bag, and on the low side, one of these will burn for about 4 minutes. On the high side, I've actually had a few that'll burn in the 10 to 11 minute range. So there's nothing wrong with petroleum jelly and cotton balls. Obviously, it's nothing sexy, but it works. It works. And then I have more Trioxane tablets in here. So I actually have 3 in the pack. And then last but not least, I keep a large piece of aluminum foil in here. The reason I do that is if I'm going to start a fire and it's wet out, or I have nowhere to set the fire up, like I can't get it up off the ground, I will take the aluminum foil and use that as my fire base. So I can open that up. I'd actually open it up all the way so I have a nice big area to effectively make the fire. That allows me to put my fat wood here, and then what I would do is take one of these, set it on there, cut that open, and then take my lighter, light that, and I'm going to start off with the fire stick or the fat wood on top of that, and then start adding the sticks and twigs that I need to get the fire going with. And this just gives you a nice base. It also reflects a little bit of heat so that it'll continue to dry those wet twigs out if you are in inclement weather. The other thing is too, if you are obviously in a situation where you're trying to be rescued, it's also kind of a signaling device. I mean, it's not great, it's definitely not like a mirror, but it will reflect sunlight if the sun is out. So alright, so this is why I prefer Trioxane as a fire starting method, especially in an emergency situation. So we lit this with a lighter, and that thing is just, I mean, it's hot. Like I can almost feel the heat from here. So go ahead and show them how that works.
So I made the base of it, so that, just so it's all this fire stable, and this wood is a little wet, but the Trioxane will most likely burn it.
Yeah, it'll dry it out. It's really wet out here today, like soaking wet, which is good because we want to actually make sure that this is going to work when we need it to.
Then you're gonna carefully set it, make sure you're not going to smother it, let it aerate. Then once the wood is burning,
and look at that, that's how hot that Trioxane gets.
gonna do that, remove it a little bit farther in.
And look how wet that wood is. I mean, it's wet. Everything here, this stuff is soaked.
And then, if you think it's good enough to the point where you can put more on top of it, then spread it out. Make sure it's aerating so you don't smother it.
And then you want to start putting, once the flames get past what you put on there, then you can start putting the mediums on. So go ahead and put those mediums on. I don't know if you can see, but that trioxane is still underneath there doing its job. So, like I said, give me one of those wet. This here, that's good. Like this stuff here, this stuff is soaked.
That's why it's smoking a
Yeah,
lot.
lots of smoke, which is good because if you're in an emergency situation, that's what you want. So that is a surefire, no pun intended, way to start a fire in an emergency situation. Trioxane, it's the best I've found. Okay guys, so let's try the trioxane with a fire steel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the center of the package here. Alright. Like that. I'm going to open that up. Now I'm just going to take my knife, I'm going to scrape a little bit of this so I get some loose pieces on top. Okay. There you go. So while Liam is trying to warm up his sub from last night, it's another reason I like the trioxane. I mean, that's pretty it's pretty strong draft coming off the hat. And it does not seem to want to go out.
It's been going now for about 5 minutes too.
So, does it smell funny? Yes. Does it work? Yes. And that's why I will tell people till I'm blue in the face, trioxane is the best emergency fire starter to put in your kit.